Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
This wasn't just any skillet. My dad's old friend, a professional chef, had given it to me before he moved overseas. It was a cast iron beauty, perfectly seasoned over decades of use with a smooth cooking surface you just can't find in modern skillets. I kept it on my stovetop and used it almost daily. The meals I cooked in it always tasted better. Maybe it was just my imagination, but I swear that skillet had some kind of magic in it. Then one day it was missing. At first, I thought I might have put it somewhere unusual while cleaning. I searched my kitchen but couldn't find it. I asked my roommate who hadn't seen it. I was upset. That skillet meant a lot to me. About 3 weeks after it disappeared, I was scrolling through social media when I saw it. There, in the background of my cousin's latest food post, was my skillet sitting on his stove. I recognized the wooden handle and the small nick on the edge from when I dropped it years ago. I texted my cousin to ask if that was my cast iron skillet in his recent post. He denied it, claiming he bought it at a thrift store. When I said it looked exactly like mine and mentioned mine had been missing for weeks, he said that lots of skillets looked the same and told me not to accuse him of stealing. But I knew it was mine. I don't know when he took it. Probably during the family dinner I hosted last month. What kind of person steals from family? I was angry. That skillet was irreplaceable. I called my friend who works in security systems. He's good with locks. I told him I needed a favor that was slightly illegal, which caught his attention. When I told him my cousin had stolen something important to me and that I knew where he lived and when he wasn't home, he asked what we were talking about. I told him it was a cast iron skillet from my dad's friend. He was surprised that I wanted to break into someone's place for a pan. I said it wasn't just any pan and asked if he was in or not. Though he thought it was ridiculous, he agreed to help. My cousin lived about 3 hours away in a cheap apartment complex with no security cameras. I knew he worked regular hours, so we planned our heist for the middle of a weekday. I felt nervous and righteous as we drove there. Was I overreacting? Maybe. But that skillet was mine, and he had no right to take it. When we arrived, my friend opened the lock, something I didn't watch too closely. We entered the apartment, and I went straight for the kitchen. There it was, my skillet, soaking in dirty water in the sink. He wasn't even taking proper care of it. Everyone knows you don't soak cast iron. I grabbed it, dried it, and we left. We stopped at a few shops, had lunch at a restaurant, and went home. Once there, I re-seasoned my skillet and put it back in its place. 2 weeks later, my cousin came to visit. I've been talking about my missing skillet to everyone in the family, so he knew I was upset about it. This guy stood in my kitchen making small talk, pretending he had nothing to do with its disappearance. He asked if I still hadn't found my skillet, and said that was a bummer. When I told him I was upset about it and how much it meant to me, he suggested I should just buy a new one. I told him it wasn't replaceable because it was a gift from my dad's friend. While he was talking with some other friends who were over, I went to my bedroom where I'd hidden the skillet. I brought it back to the kitchen and then made a show of looking through a rarely used cabinet. I shouted for everyone to look at what I found. Everyone turned as I held up my skillet. I said it must have been there the whole time, that I probably put it away while cleaning and forgotten about it. My friends congratulated me, but my cousin looked like he'd swallowed something disgusting. His face went pale in seconds. Later, when most people had moved to the living room, he cornered me in the kitchen. He asked where I really got the skillet from. I asked what he meant and said, I found it in my cabinet. He said that was impossible, and mentioned he thought someone had broken into his apartment recently because some things weren't where he left them. I asked if he had filed a police report. He said he hadn't because nothing seemed to be missing. I suggested that perhaps he should install some security cameras. He couldn't accuse me without admitting he stole the skillet in the first place. And if his parents found out he'd stolen from family, they would be very angry with him. They'd raised him better than that. He said maybe he should get cameras. My skillet was back where it belonged, and my cousin learned a lesson about taking things that don't belong to him, even if he couldn't admit it. My friend and I share looks when anyone mentions cooking equipment. Some people might think going to such lengths for a kitchen item is extreme, But when something has sentimental value, its worth can't be measured in dollars. I ended up in a hospital because of high school drama. The tension had been building for months. I transferred to Westlake High in my junior year after my mom got a new job. Being the new kid is tough, but I tried to keep my head down and focus on my studies. I just wanted to get through the year without drama. That plan ended on my third day when I bumped into her in the cafeteria. She was the daughter of a big shot real estate developer in town. Her family had donated the money for the school's new gymnasium, and she thought she owned the place and everyone in it. I apologized for bumping into her. She told me to watch where I was going and called me a loser. Then she asked if I knew who she was. I didn't respond and walked away. From that day on, she made it her mission to make my life miserable. It started small, knocking books out of my hands, spreading rumors, the usual high school stuff. I tried to ignore it, but it kept escalating. One day, she spilled her soda all over my project before it was due. Another time, she stole my gym clothes, and I had to wear the loner outfit. I wasn't the type to just take it. When she ruined my project, I had a backup saved on my laptop and still got an A. When she stole my gym clothes, I wore the loner outfit like it was high fashion and got compliments. This made her angrier. She couldn't understand why I wouldn't submit to her torment like everyone else. She asked why I didn't just cry already and what was wrong with me. I replied that I wouldn't cry over high school drama because none of it would matter in a few years. That set her off. She didn't like being reminded that her power had an expiration date. The bullying got worse over the next few months. She started getting physical, shoving me in the hallways, stepping on my feet in line, hitting me with her bag. Still, I refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing me upset. I kept thinking that eventually she'd get bored and move on. Then came that Tuesday in April. I was in the bathroom between classes when she walked in with two of her friends. I tried to leave, but her friends blocked the door. She accused me of thinking I was better than everyone else. I told her I just wanted to be left alone, and she said she was tired of me and that I needed to learn my place. She pulled out a bottle of bright red nail polish. I had no idea what she was planning until she started unscrewing the cap. She told her friends to hold me down. They grabbed my arms. I struggled, but they were stronger than me. She came closer with the open bottle. She said she wanted to see how pretty I would feel with the nail polish all over my face. I thrashed harder, turning my head away, but she grabbed my chin. When I kept my mouth shut, she pinched my nose, forcing me to open my mouth to breathe. When I gasped for air, she tried to pour the nail polish into my mouth. I bit down hard. I felt something crunch between my teeth, followed by screaming. It took me a second to realize what happened. I bit in her finger with all my strength. When I opened my mouth, part of her finger came off in my mouth. I spit it out right onto her shirt. The bathroom erupted into chaos. Her friends let go of me and started screaming. She was shrieking and clutching her hand. Blood everywhere. I was coughing and gagging, the chemical taste of nail polish burning my throat. Someone must have called for help, because teachers rushed in. When they saw the scene, they called emergency services. I don't remember much of the ambulance ride. The paramedics were concerned about the nail polish I'd swallowed, talking about toxicity and stomach pumping. All I could think about was the crunching sensation and the knowledge that I'd bitten off someone's finger. At the hospital, they rushed me to one room and her to another. I later found out they were performing surgery to reattach her finger while doctors were monitoring me for poisoning from the nail polish. My mom arrived frantic. She asked what happened, if I was okay, and mentioned the nail polish. Through tears and interruptions from the medical staff, I explained everything. What happened in the bathroom, and the months of bullying leading up to it. My mom asked why I hadn't told her about the bullying. I told her I thought I could handle it and didn't want to worry her when she was already stressed about her new job. My mom's face changed from concern to focused anger. She stepped out of the room and I heard her on the phone. When she came back, she was determined. She told me she had called our lawyer and this would end now. The next few weeks were a blur of police statements, meetings with the school board, and legal consultations. The school tried to suspend both of us, claiming it was a mutual fight, but witness statements from other students made it clear what happened. The toxicology report showed the nail polish had harmful chemicals that could have caused serious damage if I'd swallowed more. Her parents tried to press charges against me for the finger incident, but our lawyer pointed out that I was being restrained and assaulted, making it self-defense. My mom filed charges for assault, battery, and endangerment against her and her friends. The lawsuit was brutal. Her family tried to use their money and influence to make it go away, but my mom wouldn't back down. Our lawyer discovered this wasn't the first time she had bullied other students, just the first time she'd faced anything for it. The court ruled in our favor. The settlement covered all my medical bills, therapy costs, and my college tuition. Her family's reputation in town was ruined, and they eventually moved away. I finished high school through remote learning and in-person classes. The incident left me with anxiety issues that I'm still working through, but also with the knowledge that standing up for myself was right, even if what happened was traumatic for everyone. I wonder if she learned anything from the experience. I hope so. I know I did. I learned that some people will do anything to feel powerful, but strength comes from within, not from making others feel small. My life changed when I was 10 years old. One moment I was running around like any normal kid, and the next, my hip was on fire. The pain was bad, but what made it worse was that no one could figure out what was wrong with me. One doctor told me it was just growing pains. I tried to explain that it felt like something was broken inside, but he said that children my age often exaggerate pain. He suggested I try some ibuprofen and rest, but it wasn't growing pains. It took months of agony before they finally discovered that my hip had actually necrosed, the bone tissue had died, and broken. Do you know what it feels like to walk on a broken bone for months? Every step was torture. By the time they figured it out, damage had already been done. I went through treatment and physical therapy, and everyone told me I would make a full recovery. They said I was young and my body would heal. Fast forward 10 years. I should have been healthy, enjoying my 20s like everyone else. Instead, the pain in my hip came back worse. This time it was different, more intense, more persistent. Soon I couldn't walk without canes. Even standing became hard. My life became an endless cycle of doctor visits, tests, and specialists. No one could figure out what was wrong. A specialist told me that my scans didn't show anything conclusive. When I said that I could barely walk and there had to be something wrong, he suggested that perhaps my condition was psychosomatic and asked if I had considered therapy. I was in a dark place. Every day was a struggle against constant pain. Opium-based painkillers became my constant companion. I swallowed them like candy just to function. Watching my friends live their lives while I mourned the loss of mine was unbearable. It seemed I would completely lose my ability to walk. One of the worst parts was using public transportation. I needed the priority seats, but the looks I got were soul-crushing. People would stare at me with suspicion or hostility. An elderly passenger once questioned whether those seats should be for people who actually needed them. When I explained that I did need them because I couldn't stand for long periods, she said I looked perfectly fine to her and that young people these days have no respect. I guess I was too young to be visibly disabled in their eyes, like there's some magical age where disability becomes legitimate. One day I went grocery shopping, a rare thing given my condition. It was a small victory just to be out in the world. Every step with my canes was painful, but I managed to gather what I needed and made it to the checkout. The cashier, a man probably in his 40s, looked at my canes and then at my face. He smiled widely with that look of patronizing pity I had come to recognize. In a condescending tone, he asked if I had fallen in my bathtub. His voice was like he was talking to a child who had suffered a minor injury and was making a fuss. I was used to people asking blunt questions about my condition, but something about his tone, the assumption that my disability was temporary and trivial, made something snap inside me. I looked him in the eyes and told him that my bone had necrosed and we didn't know if I would ever be able to walk again. The smile vanished from his face. He went pale, his mouth slightly open but no words coming out. The transaction finished in silence. He couldn't meet my eyes as he handed me my receipt. For the next few years, my condition got worse. I reached the point where I was practically housebound, dependent on others, for the simplest tasks. Then by some miracle I found a surgeon who actually listened to me. He ordered different tests, ones no one had thought to try before. The surgeon told me there was damage that wasn't visible on standard scans, and he thought he could help me. The surgery was complex and recovery was brutal, but it worked. With a bit of metal reinforcing my hip, the doctors told me I should be able to walk for at least 30 more years. The pain didn't disappear completely, but it became manageable. I could stand without canes. I could walk more than a few steps without collapsing. I could live again. Sometimes I still think about that cashier. I wonder if he remembers me, the young person he assumed had just slipped in the shower. I hope our interaction taught him something about making assumptions. I hope he thinks twice now before asking those types of questions, before assuming that disability has a specific look or age. Because that's the thing about invisible disabilities, they're invisible. You never know what battle someone is fighting. My scars aren't visible, but they're there. The metal in my hip doesn't show through my skin, but it's keeping me standing. I'm doing better now, but those years of pain and dismissal changed me forever. I've been working at this small tech repair shop for some years now. We're just a team of 5 technicians, and we handle everything from broken phones to industrial equipment. It's a decent job. The pay is okay, my co-workers are cool, and I genuinely enjoy fixing things. There's just one massive problem. Our boss. Let me tell you about this guy. He bought the shop after making some money in real estate, thinking it would be an easy side business. The problem? He doesn't know the first thing about technology. Like the man once asked me if RAM was that thing you download to make computers faster. I wish I was joking. Despite his complete lack of technical knowledge, he's convinced he's a genius. He hovers over our shoulders, questioning our repair methods, and insists we do things his way. Most of us just nod along and then do it correctly when he's not looking. It's annoying but manageable. Well, at least it was until last week when I decided I'd had enough. The shop got a job to repair an old industrial printer. These things are massive, about the size of a small car, weigh a ton, and have more parts than I can count. They're rare these days, and finding manuals for them is nearly impossible. Luckily, I'd worked on a couple before at my previous job, so I recognized the model right away. After a quick inspection, I knew exactly what was wrong. A clog in one of the feed gears and a worn-out belt. It wasn't a complex fix. Disassemble the unit, clean out the gears, replace the belt, and reassemble. 5 hours of work, tops. I was gathering my tools when my boss came over, looking important with his coffee mug that said, "World's Best Boss," which he bought himself, by the way. I told him I was starting on the industrial printer and explained that I'd found the issue, just a clogged gear and a worn belt. I mentioned I should have it done by the end of the day. He immediately disagreed, insisting it was obviously an electrical issue. I tried to explain that I didn't think so, mentioning that I'd worked on these models before and the symptoms pointed to a mechanical problem. He cut me off, telling me that he was the boss and that I needed to check the circuit board with a multimeter. He ordered me to test everything, insisting it was definitely electrical. I tried explaining again, but he wouldn't listen. I told him to trust me since I'd fixed these printers before and it wasn't the board. He got angry then, asking if I thought I knew better than him. He called me young, cocky, and clueless, adding that this attitude was why I was still just a technician while he owned the business. When I tried to speak again, he interrupted and told me he was telling me how to do my job. He ordered me to check all the electrical components first, test everything with a multimeter, and document all my findings. He finished by saying if I didn't want to follow his orders, I could go home without pay that day. Something in me snapped at that moment. I agreed that he was right, that he was the boss, and that I'd do it his way. I grabbed the multimeter and started taking the printer apart. Completely. I mean, I disassembled that thing down to the last screw. Then, I started testing every single circuit on the board. Every single one. Not only did I test everything, but I created the most detailed documentation you've ever seen. I recorded all the readings in a spreadsheet. I took photos of every step. I even drew diagrams of the circuits and labeled all the components. I was creating a masterpiece of malicious compliance. What should have taken me 5 hours was now stretching into days. The client called on the second day, asking about their printer. My boss told them it would be done very soon and gave me a dirty look. By the end of the second day, I had a stack of papers nearly an inch thick, documenting every electrical test possible. I walked up to my boss's office and dropped it on his desk with a satisfying thud. I explained that I checked all the electrical components as he asked, and everything was fine with the board. I then asked what he'd like me to do next. He flipped through my report. The client had called 3 more times, increasingly angry about the delay. He demanded to know why it had taken so long. I replied that I was being thorough just like he instructed. I explained that I'd tested every component multiple times to be absolutely certain. Frustrated, he told me that if it wasn't electrical, then I should deal with the mechanics since I was so smart. I simply agreed, saying I'd do whatever he said. I went back to the workshop, cleaned the gears, replaced the belt, exactly what I had planned to do from the beginning. The whole thing took me about 4 hours, and by the next day the printer was up and running perfectly. The client was happy with the fix but not pleased about the delay. My boss had to offer them a discount which came out of the shop's profits, not my paycheck. For the next week, my boss avoided making eye contact with me. He knew exactly what I'd done, but there was nothing he could say. I had followed his instructions to the letter. A few weeks later, he started trying to tell me how to fix a laptop. He began saying I needed to reinstall the operating system first. I cut him off by asking if he wanted me to handle it like I did with the printer, his way. He shut up immediately and walked away. Since then, he's been hands-off with my work. The other technicians noticed and started using the same tactic whenever he tried to micromanage them. I still work at the shop and things are much more pleasant now. My boss still doesn't know anything about technology, but at least he's learned to trust the people he hired to do their jobs. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.